Welcome to another episode of RippleLIVE. It's a 13th episode, so it just happened to fall on June 13th, right? June 13th, RippleLIVE episode 13. So I think that's kind of cool. Anyway, I'm Steve
But it's not
Martin.
Friday.
It's not Friday, no, but it's still the 13th. Anyway, so Steve Martin here with my buddy Mark Spencer, who's in the Bay Area, in San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm in Arizona. Hey. We're super excited about a new show, a lot of stuff to talk about today. So, Mark, you want to tell everybody about the show format?
Sure. Just so for folks who are new here, welcome. What we do here on the show is we talk about Final Cut Pro and related applications. It's focused on answering your questions. So we'll do a tip or two to get things rolling, but we're really focused on what you want to know about and doing our best that we can to answer those, and pulling from the Hive community, everybody who's watching here, because a lot of people who are tuning in have a lot of great knowledge here to share with us. So post your questions in the chat window there, and often we get too many questions to answer. If you want to make sure your question get answered, you can click the little $ at the bottom, which is called a super chat, and you can contribute a nominal amount to support the show, and that will make your question big and colored and pinned there so we see it and we'll jump on it. And you can do that if you just want to contribute to support the show also. You don't have to answer a question. And if you do that, we greatly appreciate it because it helps us allow us to do this show. So with that, I know Steve wanted to mention a fantastic webinar that happened yesterday that I got to catch. So Steve, why don't you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, so as you know, we've been producing these RippleLIVE live streams, and we've had a ton of questions since we started this about how do you do your live streams? Not just the hardware, but what software do you use? How do you get your software to talk to YouTube? What are the best settings for bandwidth? How do you do your live switching? We get a lot of questions. So last week, or actually it was this week, it was a couple days, it was on Wednesday, it was yesterday. Oh my gosh, I've lost track of time. Anyway, so yesterday, Travis Richmond, he's my editor, DP, my tech guy. He's the guy that's doing the live switching right now for the show. I asked him to put together a tutorial on how we do all of this. And if you missed the webinar, it's not a big deal because it's now for sale as a 1-hour tutorial on our website. Travis, you go ahead and cut to my screen. So on our Ripple training site, it's called Live Streaming with OBS, and you could watch a couple of excerpts from the tutorial here. But here's a cool thing: we're selling it for $20. Normally it's $30. So, but for you guys, it's a $20 thing, and I'm looking for the sale price. It's probably up here. But anyway, there it is, $20, and you will learn all you want to know about OBS streaming, open broadcaster software, and how we do our show. So it's really not for streaming from your phone. It's more of a professional approach. How do you integrate professional cameras? Work with capturing your computer screens, work with professional audio mics, and that sort of thing. So if you want to know how to produce a pro show, I highly recommend. It's the best $20 you'll ever spend. And I'm sure Travis put the bit link up there, and you can find it there. All right. So with that, I think what I'll do is hand off the next section to Mark. He's got a really amazing tip to show you in motion, which is somewhat of a sequel to a episode I did a few weeks back about wrapping text around an object. You can check that on our YouTube channel, and he's going to take that one step further and show you how to make this effect in motion and publish it for Final Cut Pro 10. So Mark, take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Before I get started, I do want to address a couple things because people are asking questions already. First of all, Big Water Content Innovation, thank you very much for the contribution. Really appreciate it. Let us know what your actual name is, because sometimes we can't tell by what's posted up there. And hello, Amsterdam, Finland, San Diego, Malaysia. Billy Joel, someone commented, Steve, on your shirt, is Billy Joel paying you? Steve and I actually last summer, we were in New York City. We were training for Frame.io, and we got to see Billy Joel, his 100th performance at Madison Square Garden, which was just amazing. Fantastic. That's
Mark bought me this shirt. So, you know, we walked out and there was that, you know, anyway, that's why I'm a big Billy Joel fan.
There's also VFX Todd asks, any plans to do something like this for DaVinci Resolve? I own most of your DaVinci Resolve training. I think it's a great idea. We say Final Cut Pro and related applications. That's definitely a related application. So we're open to that. We're open to doing a lot of different things on here. So we'll talk more about that and see if that makes sense to have a dedicated show to do something on Resolve. There's some more specific questions, but I think maybe I'll do my tip and then maybe Steve, you can take a look at those and we'll go from there. So as Steve mentioned, my tip, I'm going to do a little bit of motion because I haven't done some motion for a while. I wanted to give motion some love here. And you guys, you may not use motion, but this is an encouragement to play with it. You can do so much with it in context of Final Cut Pro. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, when you launch Motion, you get this project browser. I'm going to select a Final Cut title because I want this to appear in Final Cut. And what my goal here is I'm going to press Shift-Z just so it fits everything in the window. I'm also going to press F6 to hide the timing pane. I really just want to see this guy here. Shift-Command-R will turn those rulers off. And I'm going to turn off this title background. I'm not interested in it. And I'm going to delete the default text. So it's really nothing there at all right now. But what I want to do, I'm going to add my own text. So T for the text tool, click in there and I'll type RippleLIVE because that's where we all are. Escape, and the font's fine. Maybe I'll increase the size. I'll go to the inspector. Let me center it. And I'll also go to the properties and reset the position so that it's centered, okay? So I just wanted some text in there. I'm also going to give it some color because it'll help with the next stage here. Now, the point of this little tip is around paint strokes in motion. And I really encourage you, I've kind of looked back on some of the things we haven't talked about for a while, and the paint in motion is just really powerful. And one thing that might be confusing to you about how to use paint is if you look at the different tools, there's a paint stroke. You can actually do paint strokes. So if you go to the library, there's these different shape styles, and like, well, what are these and how do I use them? And if you go down here at the bottom, there's a paintbrush. So if you click on that paintbrush, you get this little thing in the heads-up display that shows up. And if you click and drag around, you get some kind of stroke. But it's not very even. So I'm going to undo that. I actually don't recommend you use this paintbrush tool for most purposes. I'd rather use the one to the left here, the Bezier tool, or the letter B for short, and it works just like the pen tool in Photoshop. So my goal here is I want a paint stroke to kind of wrap around this text, and I want to publish it to Final Cut so you can change the text and you can change the paint stroke. So I'm just going to click to set a couple of control points here and drag and have a little kind of wrapping paint stroke thing go on here. Now, when I hit return, I get sort of not a very interesting paint stroke, and my playhead wasn't the beginning, so I'll move it back to the beginning and tap I, so it starts at the beginning. And that's a, excuse me, pretty boring paint stroke, but you've got lots of options for this thing. So in this heads-up display, you can see there's all these different built-in paint strokes that you can use, and you may be familiar with them. For example, I'll use this one called Light Tail, and a lot of them are animated by default. And it starts about there. So I'm actually going to trim this and bring it back so it starts at the right point and bring it out. So my playhead wasn't at the beginning. So I get this kind of cool animated light stroke thing, and I can adjust the width here to make it bigger. And you can just choose these different presets and look at what you like. But you can do that. It's easy to figure out. But what I want to focus on is trying to make this paint stroke wrap around the text. In other words, go in front of and behind it. Okay, so I'm going to increase the width a little bit more. And here's the thing. Paint strokes in motion are a 2D phenomenon. In other words, this paint stroke is on a 2D plane. I want you to see that. I'm going to add a camera just so that we can see that. I'll add a camera and switch to 3D. And if I orbit the camera, you can see that paint stroke. it has thickness, right? It looks like it has thickness, but it's on a 2D plane. And you really can't change that with a paint stroke, but you can still accomplish what we want. But you might think, oh, hey, it's got thickness, so I'm just going to rotate it down flat, and it should wrap around the text. So I'll select it, and I'll hold the Shift key down and drag up to rotate it down 90 degrees. Okay, so now it's flat, and kind of looks like it's rotating around the text. If I orbit the camera, it looks like it's rotating around the text. And you may be able to sell that, but in reality, it's in front of the text here, and it's also in front of the text back there. Even though it kind of looks like it's going behind, it's not. It's in front both times. So why is that? And this is kind of the trick that I want to show you here. I'm going to select the paint stroke and go to the inspector. And if we go to the inspector to the stroke tab, you'll see down here there is something called local 3D. So for the paint stroke to be in 3D, it's what's called local 3D, which means it's its own 3D universe separate from any other object. So it'll still be compositive in front or behind of other objects. It won't interact with those other objects. And this face camera means that each paint stroke turns to face the camera to give it the illusion of depth. So if I turn off face camera and now I orbit, now that thing looks completely flat, right? If I look on the edge, it disappears. It's got no depth to it. So I'm going to turn that back on, but I'm going to turn off local 3D. Now that I've turned off local 3D, the paint stroke actually goes in front of and behind the text. You can see right there, this part's in front and that part's behind. So it does exactly what we want now, but it's lost a lot of its thickness. So the way you can overcome that is to go to the style and increase the width. And this is because we can no longer force it to face the camera. Okay? So with that said, I can then rotate it up a little bit, and I'm going to double click one of these orbit tools just to go back to the our default view. And now we've got this paint stroke wrapping around the text. So let's just animate that text real quickly as well. I'll just use a behavior. I'll go down to text, and let's say we'll scale it in, and let's also, with that same text, we'll go to energetic, and maybe we'll flip it out. And I'll take that flip out, and I'll move it down. So the text comes on, the paint stroke goes around, and then flips out. So I just encourage you to play around with the paint strokes here, because once you've done that and you select that paint stroke, either in the heads-up display or over here in the inspector, you can choose different styles, and any of those styles will work as well. The only thing is you may need to change them so they're not in 3D. And with each of them, all you need to do is go to the stroke tab, turn off local 3D, and then potentially adjust the thickness. So finally, where I'm going with this is you can publish all this stuff to Final Cut. So this is a template. If I choose to save it, I'll hit Command-S to save. I'll create a new category for it, and I'll call the category, I'll put a Z so it shows at the bottom, and I'll call it Paint Stroke. I've got my new category. And then I'll just call this Wraparound. And I'll publish it. Now, I haven't published any parameters here, but you can go and publish tons of parameters, and I'll just show you an example of where I've done that. So if I go back to Final Cut, first of all, I'll show you the one I just added. Here's our paint stroke category, and there it is. So I'll select it and hit W to do an insert edit. And there it is inside of Final Cut, along with that little, the text animation, the paint animation, everything. And the text is, of course, editable directly in Final Cut without doing anything. The text itself, the text color, everything about it is editable without needing to publish anything. Excuse me. But the paint stroke here, you really can't do anything else with because we didn't publish anything else. But check it out. I've got another one here where I published a bunch of parameters for. So with this one, all I did was publish a bunch of parameters, and I created a quick rig so I could choose different brush sources. So I can have different kinds of brushes, and each one I can adjust their color and their width. I can adjust the color over the stroke just by coming down here and clicking and choosing a different color. And then I've also published the rotation, not just of that paint stroke itself, but of the camera. So we can change how this whole thing kind of lives in 3D space and, you know, customize this exactly the way we want to right inside of Final Cut. I even published the points of that stroke, so I can manipulate each of those points independently in case the new text I have is wider or not as wide as the text that's in there now. I can make this come closer, and I've got a lot of control over modifying this without being overwhelmed with a ton of parameters. So if a Final Cut user can go in here and figure out very quickly how to go ahead and modify this and make it look exactly the way they want to. So just another encouragement to play with motion, play with its capabilities with paint strokes, and how you can publish stuff to Final Cut with a little bit of a trick about allowing a paint stroke to wrap around 3D text. And that's my tip. So questions about that or anything else, and we can jump back in. So Steve, what do we got going on?
That was a great tip, Mark. Love it. So it's always really great to use motion to publish some really great stuff. And speaking of which, there's a number of questions. So because you just showed a motion tip, there was one specific question from Nathan. Mark, Nathan would like to see maybe a blog article or maybe in a movie or the top 10 things that you might want to publish from Motion to Final Cut that are simple, just easy publish things that you would just, no, these things need to be into Final Cut. So
yeah, that's great. In fact, I'll just mention two right now. It's a great idea to do more, but one would be an adjustment layer, because that's probably one of the easiest things you can publish from Final Cut is just take a new text layer, delete everything and publish it, and you've got an adjustment layer. That's a great idea. Another one would be the fade, a dissolve. That's a text-only dissolve with no audio dissolves or vice versa. That's a great idea. Ooh, go Warriors, yes, and not Raptors, Warriors. Oh my God, yeah, tonight, you know, it is my son's graduating from middle school, and we've got a graduation to go to, and we have a celebration dinner, but we're cutting that celebration dinner short because we've got to get back for that game. That's going to be a big game.
Game 7, yeah.
It's Game 6, actually. It's Game 6.
Game 6. All right.
Today.
Yeah.
I missed a show. So let's see what else.
Okay.
I know we had some earlier really questions.
Yep, I have that.
Ahead,
there was
Steve.
a question from
Okay.
Eric. The Apple 4K display. He wants to know, will I still need a Blackmagic box to work with the Apple 4K, 6K, actually it's 6K display.
6K.
Well, I don't know because I don't have the monitor here. So I guess the really question is what you want to do. I mean, do you need to get out a Rec 709 signal to this monitor or a Rec 2020 signal? I know that, Mark, that you probably know this more than what I would in terms of its compatibility with doing, HDR monitoring, if it's close to PQ or how close it is to like a Flanders monitor, right? I don't know.
Well, that's the big thing that I would say this. If you're just using it as a display like any other display, no, you don't need the AJA box at all. You just, it's a Thunderbolt connected display, and you can use it like any other display.
Yes.
If you want to use it as a reference monitor, that's a different thing, specifically with HDR. And what hasn't been made clear yet, it's an HDR display, it can support HDR. If you want to send HDR material out to it from Final Cut Pro, yes, you need the AJA I/O 4K plus to be able to do that, 4K plus. For sure, you're going to need that. The question I have is if that display basically gets certified so that it can be used as an actual reference monitor as opposed to, a Sony BVM 300 or something.
Right. So hopefully that answered your question. Great question. So then Margot asked a question earlier. Can you step through loading LUTs? When I drag a LUT from the effects browser, I don't get LUT options in the inspector.
Awesome. Yeah. Do you want me to take that?
Yeah, go ahead and take that.
Yeah. So I'm already screen sharing. So I'm going to go over to Final Cut, and I'm going to go to my advanced color correction deal here and just find something that should have a LUT. Okay. So So the question was about whether, she said, Margot said, when I drag a LUT from the effects browser, I don't get LUT option in the inspector. Okay, so first of all, I'd ask why are you doing it from there? Or let me address it the other way. In Final Cut Pro, there are two kinds of lookup tables, or LUTs. One's called a camera LUT, and one's called a creative LUT, or or a custom LUT. A camera LUT is designed by the camera manufacturer with the intention of putting a log clip back into Rec. 709. That's the intention, and in order to use a camera LUT, first of all, they're usually applied automatically by Final Cut Pro upon import. If your clips have the metadata information, they'll be applied automatically. If not, you can assign them. You do that up in the inspector. So I'm going to go up here to the I version of the inspector, the little I in the inspector. And then you need to be, you can't be in basic view. You need to be in general at least. Okay? When you do that, when you go to at least the general view, you have a camera LUT pop-up menu. And here you have a variety of built-in camera LUTs. That Panasonic, Sony, Canon, Blackmagic, ARRI, these are all built-in LUTs, and usually they'll be automatically assigned. And sometimes you might want to take them off. It's a longer discussion about whether you want to use this camera LUT or not for your grading. Sometimes people use them temporarily just to make the footage look better for themselves or a client before taking them off and doing their own custom grade. You can also use it and keep it on there as a starting point for your grade. And if the stuff's in great shape, you can just apply the LUT and mostly be done. So that's the first thing, is the camera LUT. You'll notice that I also have some custom camera LUTs that can be applied in here. So all these built-in ones are obviously built in. You don't need to do anything. They just show up. But you can add your own camera LUT by choosing this Add Custom Camera LUT pop-up menu here. And I'm not going to do it. It's obvious how to do it. So that's number one. Number two is a creative LUT. So in addition to, or instead of, a camera LUT, you can apply a creative LUT to give your footage a specific kind of look. And you do that by going to the effects browser, going down to color, and going to the custom LUT. And I don't know why mine's, let me see why it's not interesting. I'm getting a spinning wheel right now. That should see a picture of it right there. So that's the custom LUT. And you apply that by dragging it onto your footage. We'll see what happens here. So I'm just going to talk through it. You drag it on your clip or double click it to apply it to any selected clip or clips. And then up in the inspector, in the effects section, there we go. It's back. So let me put it on here. I'll go up to my inspector. And what Margot was saying is, hey, there's nothing here. Well, guess what? These are custom LUTs that you provide, okay? So the only way for something to be here is if you've installed something. So you'd want to go down to Choose Custom LUT, where you can choose a custom LUT that you've either created yourself, or you've purchased, or you've downloaded from the internet. There's a ton of free ones out there. Huge number of ways to get LUTs. But the idea is that you install them yourself. And you see I've got a variety of them here. You can actually choose Reveal in Finder, and it will bring up and show you, in fact, this is where they all stored. In your library props, application support props, custom LUTs is where they're stored. So the basic idea, Margot, is you need to install them yourself. The final thing I'll say about that, you need to be careful, because you need to understand if that creative LUT was designed to be applied to footage that has already been put into Rec. 709. If it was designed that way, and it usually says so in the name of the LUT because it'll have Rec. 709 in the name, that means you need to take your log encoded clip and first put it in Rec. 709 with a camera LUT, and then you can apply the creative LUT afterwards, and it should look correct. If it's designed to be applied to a log clip, then you would not want to first have that camera LUT on. I know that was a lot of talking. We've talked about it before, but I want to make sure that makes sense. So, Steve, what else we got?
Phil McDonald, thank you for that super chat. Really appreciate it. Awesome.
Oh,
there
wow.
are a couple we had a couple of the questions that came in. One question that was asked by Tim was, how can I remove siren sounds? And he specifically referenced the old Soundtrack Pro. Those of you remember, almost 10 years, 11 years ago, Apple had a bundle called Final Cut Studio, and one of the apps was called Soundtrack Pro. And one of the things that was great about it, it had this feature, it had a frequency spectrum analyzer, so you could you could actually see all your sound. It looked like paint spray, like somebody would paint spray. So you would see like all the noise, and you could look at it, and like if you had like a bird chirp or a dog or a cat, or even like he was saying, a siren, in the background, you could see that in the frequency spectrum. You could see where it falls in the speaker, and then isolate it. You can, I think you just drag a box.
Thing was
on
awesome.
It, you could knock it out. It was great. Unfortunately, nothing like that exists in Final Cut Pro 10 to specifically isolate a frequency. Mark, you work with Logic. Is there? I don't recall there's anything in Logic that has a frequency spectrum analyzer like that.
I don't think so. I was going to recommend the Ozone plugins.
Yes.
You have to purchase the iZotope Ozone. iZotope, iZotope, Ozone has one, so you could buy it. They've got an advanced. They have a sales up pretty often too, but I think that's the way you need to. Only way you need to. What you'd have to do to get inside of Final Cut. Yeah.
I was going to say the iZotope plugins would be my recommendation. All right, great question. So there's another question about Caps Media asked about droplets not working in Mojave. So what I would like to do to answer his question is, because a lot of people out there may not even know what a droplet is or why you would use one. So I think that would be a good little tip. And I was thinking, because I'm actually running High Sierra on my Mac screen, maybe because you're running Mojave, maybe you could test it on your end and see if it verifies. He says droplets no longer work in Mojave, so maybe you can test that. And while I'm showing like what droplets are on my end, so what I'm going to do is just talk about what a droplet is. I'm on my screen here, and I just going to make this simple. So I have a 4-clip here. I'm going to send this over to Compressor. I'm going to have these clips. I'm going to send it over to Compressor. In fact, let me make the screen a little larger because I got a bunch of junk on the desktop. Control Command F, and I'm going to go File, Send to Compressor. So I can send this straight away to Compressor, and Compressor interface opens, and it looks like I already sent something here, but it shows up in what's called a job. And I'm getting the spinning beach ball for whatever reason. Still loaded. By the way, I call that the spinning beach ball of work. It's working right. Oh, there we go. So I have the right. So the next thing I want to do is apply a preset to this. So over here under custom, these are all my custom presets that I've built. And you can make any number of them. You can even have these show up in Final Cut Pro 10. Basically, these are compression presets. So what I'm going to do is create a droplet. And to create a droplet is you just right-click on a preset, choose Save as Droplet. And then you choose where you want to save it. I've already done that, so I'm not going to go through the step. But really what's nice about a droplet, I'm going to go ahead and close this. You don't need to have Compressor open at all to use a droplet. I'm going to close that and just minimize this. So here's the droplet that I just shared. Okay? And what's nice is it sits on your desktop and it's set for ProRes. So I don't have to open Compressor, but if I have a movie or any number of movies, I simply take the movie and drop it right on the droplet. And it will start encoding using those encoding presets in the background automatically without having to open Compressor. In fact, you get a little window here. There's the setting, and you can choose a source where you want the movie and save to. Source means it's going to save it in the same location that the movie file is. So right now that movie's on the desktop. Source means that the encoded version will also be stored on the desktop. So I just click Start Batch. And I can go about working in Final Cut, jump into another app, and do whatever I want. It's working in the background. It's compressing in the background. It's fantastic. In fact, you can see here that movie that I just dropped on the droplet. There it is right there. So the droplet works. So the question specifically was, this droplet workflow isn't working in Mojave. So again, I can't verify that. That's why I asked Mark to see if he can.
So Steve, I just tested it, and it's working great. It's working great in Mojave. So I opened Compressor. I just saved the Apple devices preset as a droplet, and I dropped the movie on it. Somebody mentioned you have to double click them. You can double click to open it first, but I didn't even have to do that. I drag and dropped my movie right onto the droplet, and it did the job.
Yeah, as a
So
matter of fact,
it's
if
working.
if you couldn't drop stuff on it, they should change the name to something else because
Yeah,
right?
not a droplet.
It's not a droplet. It's an open. It's a double click it and drop it. Yeah. So yeah, you got to be able to do it. And Mark just proved that it is. One thing I would check, Mr. Capps Media Center, is that you're going to want to make sure that you have the latest version. I'm making assumptions here. Making sure that you have the right version, the updated version of Compressor, Final Cut Pro, and Motion. And then you're not one version behind, even by a simple incremental dot release. So it works. So anyway, that's good to check one thing off. All right. Yeah, funny. He calls it, they're now openlets. For him, they're openlets. That's a good name.
Yeah. You know what I accidentally did? I made a droplet of a whole group of presets.
Yeah.
Rather than a single one for Apple devices. So it's now making me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different versions of my movie it's kicking out. But it works great. And Compressor is not running either. I quit Compressor and it's just pumping out 6 movies for me, just like that. Love it.
I'm going to scroll back up to Big Water. Thank you for the super chat of $10. Really appreciate that. And he said, graphic webinar. And by the way, that graphic webinar, I'm going to kind of point you to that for a moment. If you could just, let's see here, to my screen. Oh, there it is. All right, so about a week ago, I did a webinar called Building a Motion Graphics Toolkit. In this webinar, I went through all of my favorite apps and techniques and workflows for creating content that you would publish for Final Cut Pro, like how to create a color palette using your iPhone or iPad from basically anything around you, how to make 3D text look really amazing, how to publish vector graphics for Final Cut, how to customize third-party templates. A lot of people buy templates and they're like, I have no idea how to customize these templates to my own personal use. So I created this tutorial to show people, like, you can open any template and customize. I show you how to approach it and even publish specific parameters from that template so it's available in Final Cut Pro 10. So I highly recommend this tutorial. It's about an hour long, called Motion Graphics Toolkit. It's on sale. It's $20, just like the OBS webinar that Travis did yesterday. I mean, we're trying to keep the prices down. So, a lot of people, it's like, we want to make them reasonable, but also pack them with information. So this is a good price, $20 for an hour, and you learn all of my tips for doing a motion graphics toolkit. So yeah, so Big Water, you were asking about more. Yeah, I want to do more of these. That was just like the first volley. I have so many more, techniques with regard to making really cool content for Final Cut Pro 10. As a matter of fact, Mark and I are working on some really cool stuff that we're going to make available by the next RippleLIVE, a set of plugins. It's going to be insane, and we're going to price them so insanely cheap that you're going to, there's no reason you're going to want to say no to them. They're going to be that great, and there's going to be a set of them. That's coming. All right.
And I'm going to be doing a webinar, it looks like probably in July now, about basically how to work with interview footage. Like, we'll look at all the different transcription options that are out there and compare them and contrast them so you can choose the best tool for the job for doing transcription, how doing captions versus subtitles, and looking at this product from Lumberjack called Builder, which is an amazing way to build. It's basically an NLE to allow you to build a paper edit that you bring into Final Cut, it's outstanding. So that'll be coming up as well. We've got a ton of stuff on the pipe. I want to address a couple of questions and things people said. One thing, just to close, like a little bit more on the thing about LUTs. Margot wrote back and said, I guess I have to load some creative LUTs before I'll even get them the custom LUT window in the info panel, because right now I didn't get the screen. You should get the screen. That there's something wrong if you're not, before you put any LUTs in at all, when you apply the custom LUT effect and you go to the, you don't go to the info panel, you go to the inspector and you go to the video tab of the inspector.
Yep, I think she's going to
the
the wrong place.
And you should see it there.
Yeah.
Maybe you're going to the wrong place. If you're going to the video tab, if it's not there, there's something wrong. I mean, I would try trashing your preferences or reinstalling Final Cut, but it's definitely there. So I definitely would check that out. Scott Markowitz made a good comment. I've observed that some old droplets created in previous OS versions may not work in Mojave. So that's a good point, because I created a brand new one right here within Mojave and it worked fine. So you need to make a new version of the droplet. That's a really good point.
So this one, Murray Cater, has a motion question. That's for you.
Made a motion template. Yeah. Since the screen is so huge, we want to bring the video down to 80%. So I need to understand more. What do you mean, since the screen is huge? I don't understand. You have to explain that a little bit more, because I don't understand it. Why, when I export, the sound is not synced at all? What happened? No idea, Murray. I can't tell you. I'd have to see what you're doing. I don't know about what you're talking about, scaling it down, and it certainly should be in sync. I wish I could help you. I just need to know more about the project. Probably have to see the project to see what's going on.
Well, this might be a good point to talk about something else that we offer, and Mark and I and Travis, we do one-on-one coaching too. So, like for example, if you get stuck on something, you go to our website, and at the bottom you go to coaching, and then you can actually purchase like half-hour and hour increments where we walk you through stuff, and we can look at your screen, we can take over your screen. And we found that a lot of people really like that, because they get the kind of one-on-one with us. And obviously we can't cover every scenario in a RippleLIVE or even in a tutorial, because you all have different, projects you're working on, and different, complexities, templates, what have you. So want to make that available. Also too, if it's something simple, then you can use support@rippletraining.com. Post your question there. We monitor that every day. And if it's simple, we can answer. If it's more complex, we might direct you to our one-on-one coaching. But a lot of times it's just like, oh, I forgot to turn on the switch box. Like I had a question the other day. Someone was asking, why doesn't the continuous play work in the browser? You know how the skimmer goes from one clip to the other without stopping? It was just looping over the same clip. He had to turn looping on. I said, oh, press Command L, turn it off, and solve the problem. So you could use our support at rippletraining.com for those sorts of things. But if it's something more involved, then we'll probably direct you to one of our 30-minute or 60-minute coaching sessions. All right. So.
All right. Other questions? There's a couple of people mentioning the idea of doing a tutorial on MO2. So that's from motionvfx.com. For people who don't know, it's basically a plugin for Final Cut that allows you to put 3D objects in, light them, texture them, animate them. Philip McDonald asked, any thoughts on a tutorial on MO2 within Final Cut Pro 10 as opposed to motion? For me, I wouldn't say as opposed to motion, I'd say in addition to motion, because they're very different tools for different things. I think it's a great idea. I have not used, I used it when it was the previous version, so I'm behind. I used to use a lot of Cinema 4D that would do a lot of that 3D work. It's a much more robust package than MO2, because it's but it's very expensive relative to, it does a lot of other things, which is why I wasn't using MO2 at all. But I haven't done that for quite a while. I've been doing a lot of other things. So that's a good idea. We should dig into MO2 and look at doing perhaps a webinar on how to really take advantage of that, because it looks like a great product. I've heard great things about it. And Simon's a great guy. They make great tools there. So, well, thank you for the idea.
There was a question that Nathan McAvoy asked about EXIF data from video to show in the inspector. Now, currently, Final Cut Out of the Box doesn't, but I just got an email a couple of weeks ago from a guy who made a plugin that allow you to bring in EXIF data. I don't have that in front of me, but if you email me at support@rippletraining, the one I just mentioned, I will get you information about that plugin. Apparently, he's built it for Resolve. He's built it for Final Cut. So that you can search EXIF data on your camera metadata. So, okay. Favorite Big Water, favorite audio plugins. We are a big fan of the iZotope collection of plugins. In fact, I think I might have the website up here if you want to just jump over here. iZotope makes some really great plugins. Their current set of plugins for Final Cut Pro 10 are the RX series. This is RX7. This is the base model, and it's a little pricey. It's $400. I mean, but look, if it does what you need it to do, for a client, that's you could pay it off. It's in basically one job. Seriously, I mean, I'm just looking at this thing here. Look at that. It's got a frequency spectrum view. for audio repair. So it's right there. I mean, so this is definitely one of our favorite plugins. And of course, there's, really advanced expense, there's a $1,200 one and a $1,500 one. So I use the standard suite. I've been really happy with it. I haven't had any need to upgrade. But anyway, you asked me about my favorite audio plugins. This was certainly one of them. Travis, do you have any audio plugins that you?
No, it'd be iZotope.
Yeah, it's iZotope. Okay. All right. So it looks like everyone wants us to do an MO2 tutorial. Like if we do an MO2 tutorial, we'll probably do it in our webinar format, which would be like 1 hour. Yeah. We cover the basics. Go on and you come online with us for an hour. One of the things great about our webinars is that we fully produce the tutorials, then we screen them. And so at the end of so you sit there and watch them, and then after the tutorial, you ask questions. So it's we've been getting a lot of great feedback. People love the fact they can screen the tutorial. They can carve out the time to watch it, and then they have another 30 minutes with the author of the tutorial to answer questions. And that's what we did with our live streaming webinar yesterday and my motion graphics webinar a week before. So people seem to love the format. If we do it at all, I'm saying we want it. You guys keep asking for it. That's probably the format it will take in the near future. Okay, awesome.
Hey Steve, here's a good a question for you from Peter Rude. Big questions: audio limiter or compressor? What's the difference? What's better?
Okay, the basic difference is that a compressor is basically what it's doing is taking the signal. You have your dynamic, your low and your high. And it's making the louder parts softer and the softer parts louder. It's really compressing the signal. And really, I like to call a compressor an automatic volume turn downer. So it's like if someone was there, but when the volume hits a certain threshold or a certain point, it's like someone's there to turn down the volume, or turn up the volume at the other end. So you set up the compressor with a number of controls. I believe the threshold. You set the ratio, the threshold, and then you adjust it. But it really, what it does is it compresses the signal where you still maintain your your high end, your low end, and it's used for lots of things. It'll make voices stand out in the mix, and or if somebody's shouting, and you're cutting to someone who's like talking normally, you want to be able to equalize those so that they're at the basic same level. That's what a compressor is used for. Now, a limiter, on the other hand, is not a compressor. We often refer to a limiter as a brick wall limiter. What it does is it just puts you set a threshold, and when the volume hits that threshold, it just says, okay, reduce it by this much. It just boom and brings it down. That's all it is. It's like a brick wall. Runs in, brings it down, and there's nothing it does on the low end. It's like using a hammer. You're smashing down the top end of your audio signal, and oftentimes, a limiter is just what you need just to make sure that you're not clipping, and also that you're able to raise your overall volume. We use a limiter quite frequently on our tutorials where we want to get the volume all up, maximum, but we're also not clipping. So we'll put a limiter at the top. We'll set that threshold so that we're just right there. We get at the loudest peak before clipping. So we use a limiter of that. Now, that's a good lead in. Our next webinar that Travis is going to do is all about audio plugins. We're going to be looking at limiters, compressors, possibly some third-party plugins. So this is a lot of audio. We're going to have that as a webinar probably very soon. So all of these questions, if you have something specific that you'd like to know about working with audio, start sending them to us, and we'll get those to Travis, and we'll try to get those integrated in. But we're pretty excited about that as well. A lot of questions about audio. So hopefully that answered your question but we'll have an actual tutorial that will go through the differences specifically with media, so you'll be able to see it.
Awesome.
All right.
Hey, so a couple things. First of all, hi, Ben Balzer. I see he's jumped in and answered some questions. Appreciate it. Good to see you here. One question was, what's the best recommended screen recording app for creating tutorials? Clips were brought in Final Cut 10, Final Edit. So we're big Screenflow fans. We've been using Screenflow for a long time, going back to probably version 1 or 2. And we are big time on that. And you're saying you're going back into Final Cut Pro for the final edit. That's totally fine. You can do it all in Screenflow. We go back and forth. So definitely check out Telestream's Screenflow. They bought it a few years ago, and they continue to enhance it.
It's fantastic. In fact, Honestly, we do 95% of our editing in Screenflow. It's got a nonlinear editor built in, and it does graphics and callouts. And then we just end up spitting out the ProRes. We spit out a ProRes file at the end of the chain, and then we bring it into Final Cut for last minute cleanup. We add chapter markers in Final Cut. We clean up the audio using
opening title,
the aforementioned limiter, and we get it cleaned up, and then we publish it. And then that's what when we do our webinars, that's what you're seeing. It's directly out of Final Cut, and then we post it to our online player for you. So
yeah, it's great for Zooms, and it just we do as much screen editing and ScreenFlow as we do in Final Cut. Seriously, we use
that brings up a good question. Is if that's a subject we've covered ScreenFlow in the past, but we'd be interested in doing a webinar on ScreenFlow for sure, but we need to know there's enough interest out there to do it. It's always about figuring out how many people.
Yeah, what if you want to know about? There's.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like Travis, who just did our OBS webinar, that was huge. It was hugely, we had so many people attend that, and we're still getting people asking about how we stream. And so it's always about trying to pick the right subject that resonates with people. So if you think ScreenFlow would be good, so I've heard ScreenFlow, MO3, audio, and maybe some motion tutorials on like how to publish like core effects for Final Cut. So great. These are all great ideas.
Very good tips in here.
Yeah.
Hey, Ken Bennett is asking, I don't think the answer is no, Ken, but I'll ask it anyway. Any apps out there that can help correct customer out-of-focus footage that sharpen, I guess he means the sharpen filter can't do? And I would say no. Unless there's something you know of, Steve, that's going to sharpen out-of-focus footage, I've never heard of anything, consumer. Maybe the military's got something.
Edgar Davis mentioned that iZotope Elements is on sale for $150.
Yeah, I saw that. You want to make sure, you want to check what's in there. And the most important one is the noise reduction, I think. That's the most popular iZotope plugin, is to be able to use it for their deverb, to take out reverb. Noise reduction and reverb are the biggest things in there. So see if those are included in there. I think that's probably what I got, is the Element Suite, because it goes on sale on a regular basis. So thanks for that, Edgar.
Awesome.
Eugene Laren says, have you noticed the new HSL mask on the new Final Cut Pro Mac Pro marketing image? Yeah, we saw, well, I don't know about the marketing image, but we definitely saw that pop up, and a few people mentioned that during the demos in there, that they were running a new version of Final Cut, and there was an interesting little HSL controls, hue, saturation, and luminance for, it looked like for a color mask. So that looks interesting and exciting. Would love to see that. So can't really comment beyond that. See what happens if and when that happens.
Yeah, I'm just touching on that.
Who wants to buy an hour of your time just to hang out with you, Steve?
A lot of people are asking about. They say they want to do the audio webinar. I think there's a lot of interest on the audio webinar. So we're definitely working on that. The script is in rough form, and we have all the pieces there. We just got to refine and get it recorded. All of our webinars are scripted, so they're really tight. We value your time. We're not going to just ramble on about stuff for an hour. So we try to pack in as much information as we can in these webinars. So see the aforementioned webinar that Travis did on OBS, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Just tons of information. So yeah, that's great.
Hey, Murray Cater did a follow-up question about he was asking about motion before. He said, we're showing on a Movieplex screen, which is about 30 feet high. That's why we wanted to bring the screen down in size. Again, I don't understand that. I suspect maybe you're talking about aspect ratio, Murray, rather than size, because size doesn't matter. It's all about the aspect ratio does the aspect ratio of your delivery match the aspect ratio of your project? So yes. Your project is 16:9, but maybe you're on some 30, it's taller than is wide or something. If it's a different aspect ratio, then you should be designing in that aspect ratio. And if you didn't, you're going to need to pillar box or letter box. In other words, you're going to have black bars on the sides or tops and bottoms to address that in order to deal with it. So, but I don't know why you'd want to bring the screen down in size to be on a 30-foot high screen. I just have to understand more about that, but I suspect it's related to aspect ratio. So feel free to add more to that if you want to. You can also follow up with us after the fact if you want to at support@rippletraining.com. Could you show the process? This is bits to pics video. Could you show the process of recording and selecting among multiple takes for a voiceover?
Yeah, let's see. It's been a while since I've used the voiceover tool in Final Cut. It's been a really
You gonna try to wing it?
Yeah, let's see.
Go for it.
Yeah, so let's see here.
It's like Shift Command 8 or something, if I remember right.
Is it? Let's see. Yeah, you know, it's so funny. I do all of my voiceovers in other apps. I use my iPad almost primarily now, and I use Logic. So I don't even know where that tool is. That's hilarious. That again, I don't use it that often, but there it is. It's yeah,
it's under the window menu.
It's Option Command 8.
Option Command 8, yeah.
All right. So so I'm gonna do is Option Command 8. And then blah, 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 blah. Okay, so it's getting from my microphone. And I think you can assign, I could call this Steve VO. And under the
I think you need to open the advanced to get, yeah, you're on it.
Yeah, you know, open the advanced. Yeah, there's an advanced setting in here. And you could set your microphone up. So you choose a microphone. And right here, I'm just using my built-in camera mic. It says countdown. What's really nice is that you can assign a role. Like, for example, I can assign a dialogue, or I can assign effects, or I can even do a custom role, which is what I think is pretty fun. So, like, for example, I tend to do this to keep my voiceovers separate. If I was doing this, I'd keep them separate. I'd go in here and I'd add a audio role, and I'd call this VO, and I'd click apply. And then under the role, I would say, all right, let's assign that a role. So when it puts it in there, it'll show up with that role automatically. So let's go ahead and do this. All right. So by the way, it just picks up. You don't have to set a range. I believe it just starts where the playhead is, and it does a countdown, right? Let's see here. You know, I'm gonna try setting a range here. Maybe do that. Hit there.
Maybe it'll loop then, so you can do the takes.
All right. Here we go. California is one of the most beautiful states in the Union. Okay, all right, so it ignored that. So what happens if I do it again? Here I go. California is one of the most beautiful states in the Union. And one more.
Yep, it created an addition.
Yeah, I know.
It.
California is one of the most beautiful states in the Union. All right. So what's really great about that, I'm going to close this, and this is why I love Final Cut. It's been a while, but it's so intuitive. So if I click this little audition, you can see there's an audition. So all 3 takes are in here. All 3 takes. Now the question is, how do I combine them? Well, what I would do is not keep them in there. If I was doing this and I wanted access to all 3 takes, I'd select that, and under clip, I would break apart clip items. Look, there's my 3 takes all connected. And let's say I wanted the first part of this take. Let me. Here
California is one of the most.
You know what? I can't even hear what I'm saying. But anyways, they say I want the first part of that take. Maybe I'll split that there, silence that portion, and maybe I'll use the second part of this take. So I'll move this here. Command B, that's
nice.
Silence, and then I'll set that B. So look, I'm using the first part of take 1, the second part of take 2. All right. Yeah.
Nice. Well done. Hey.
And I mean, for not
that was
touching
impressive.
it. Yeah, for not touching it for like, I don't know how long. I mean, that's actually pretty cool, Mark. I mean, you know, it's like you just got to break apart your clips so you can see all of your takes.
Somebody asked
Yeah.
what iPad app you use for VO.
Someone asked what iPad app I use. I use an app called Twisted Wave. Twisted Wave. And I just love that app so much. As a matter of fact, it's as close to Soundtrack Pro, I referred to that earlier, as any other app I've ever used. And it's all on the iPad. It's fantastic. And you can and then when I'm done editing, I just send it over to Dropbox and I bring it into Final Cut Pro. It's great. All right. Thanks, Kurt. Thank you, Kurt, for that
Yeah,
donation.
Kurt, thank you very much. So Big Water says, I have problems adding to an audition take. It creates a new one. I don't know. If you just try doing what Steve did, just hit record each time. I remember before you didn't have to hit record each time. You could record it, it would loop back and come in. Maybe there's still a way to do that. But,
yeah, I don't. It's been a while, but this is. I think that you hit stop and that's your one take, and then as long as you're going to do another take, it just knows that the playhead's in the same place. I think if you move the playhead somewhere else and then try to record, it doesn't remember where it was. I'd have to look at that a little bit more.
Hey, Murray, there's no support page. It's an email address, support@rippletraining.com. And we'll help you as best we can. I mean, we can't, we can't support everybody on everything for free because we've been doing it all today and we've got to make a living. But we're happy if you explain your situation a little bit more. I'd be happy to try to help you as much as possible. So support@rippletraining.com.
D Creative Vision, hello, is it possible to correct banding on a clip? Banding. I suppose you're shooting a really beautiful gradient sunrise with your 8-bit iPhone or camera, and it's got bands in it. Because you're not working at the bit depth. I mean, most cameras like GoPros, iPhones, almost look, even the Canon C100 I'm shooting with right now is 8-bit. And the way to I don't know. I mean, you could smooth out the banding. Mark might have suggestions about smoothing banding. You can't make it go away entirely, but really the normal approach to that is to add some noise and blend it in. So you can use a noise generator and use a blend mode. Very low opacity is usually what you do is just throw in a very fine-grained noise to try to help with that banding. And it's tough. It can help blur it out a little bit. You can also blur a little bit. You can do selective blurring because all the effects in Final Cut Pro have masks built in. So if it's a lockdown shot, you could mask the banded section and add a little bit of blur. I would try that, and I would try adding some noise with a blend mode or something like overlay on there. Look in the generators for that. Scott asked,
every time I move the
Gillies,
playhead.
I'm pretty. Okay, that was a comment to someone else. That's good. All right. So Ben Balzer says the iRig mic. Can you give me my iRig? This is
I actually put it away.
Oh, did you? Is it over? Hang on.
I'll get it.
So Ben, that's a really. Let me use the iRig. I'll show you what I use to get my audio into my iPad, and I think it might be good. Thank you, sir. Travis just went. So this is called the iRig Pro, and it's got a lightning connector on it. I think I showed this in episode 1. Basically, you plug this into your iPhone or your iPad, and it's got a old school like potentiometer, a pot. You can adjust the levels, and you have some lights that'll actually show you when you're clipping or where you're getting not only clipping but show you whether your mic needs preamp or not. There's a preamp switch. So if your mic has a preamp, you don't need batteries, just turn that on. And here's the best part. It's got a headphone jack. Because I'm using the lightning port on my iPhone, I can't monitor my audio. So thankfully the iRig folks put a jack there so I can actually listen back from my edit. So can't highly recommend this enough. I love this thing. I use it constantly. For on the road, I record directly into my iPhone or directly into my iPad using Twisted Wave.
Hey, Steve?
Yeah.
Hey, it's almost noon our time. Maybe you just want to let folks know when our next Ripple Lives are. So we're pretty consistent. We're trying to do these things every 2 weeks on Thursdays at 11 Pacific. But you can see on Steve's screen there the next 3 coming up that we're planning to do straight through the summer. So hopefully you guys will join us over the summer as we do these. We're going to keep at it and try to answer your questions as best we can. And we've got a lot of great news. Steve talked about a lot of great new stuff in the pipeline. So we're looking forward to having a great summer with you guys.
Yep. So wanted to thank you guys for all your questions and really appreciate it. Thank you for your support. If you've bought a plugin, a tutorial from us, really, or even super chat, really appreciate it.
Yes.
Yeah, and user support at Ripple Training if you need to. Can't promise we're going to answer it depending on the complexity, but we're here to help. That's what we do. We want to help you be better storytellers, and that's what we do. We love what we do. So thank you again. So until next time, we will see you June 27th. Thanks a lot. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.